Imagine you are the most powerful man in England. You have broken with Rome. You have married the woman you obsessed over for 7 years. You have declared yourself supreme head of the church. Everyone who matters has bent the knee, signed the oath, acknowledged your authority. Everyone, except one man. Your friend, your mentor, the man you once called the greatest scholar in Christendom. The man who sat at your table, who tutored your daughter, who knew you before you became untouchable. Thomas More. And because he will not bend, you are about to show England exactly what happens to conscience when it faces absolute power. What Henry VIII did to Thomas More before his execution was not just political necessity. It was personal, it was calculated, and it crossed lines that even Henry's contemporaries, men accustomed to Tudor brutality, found disturbing. This is not the story you learned in school. This is what the letters reveal, what the Tower records document, what the witnesses whispered and the historians buried. If you believe that the documented records of history's most calculated betrayals must be remembered, consider liking this video and subscribing. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now let's go back to May 1534, because Thomas More has just been arrested, and Henry has 13 months to break him. To understand what happens next, you need to understand what Thomas More represented. He was not just a lawyer or a statesman. He was the intellectual conscience of England, author of Utopia, friend to Erasmus, Lord Chancellor until he resigned rather than support Henry's break with Rome. More was brilliant, funny, principled in ways that made other men uncomfortable. He wore a hair shirt under his robes, practiced severe penances, believed that integrity was not negotiable. And Henry had loved him for it. This is the detail that makes everything that follows more disturbing. Henry and Thomas weren't just king and subject. In the early years of Henry's reign, they were close, really close. Contemporary accounts describe them walking together in the palace gardens, discussing philosophy, theology, and politics. Henry would visit More's home in Chelsea unannounced, stay for dinner, and play with More's children. Erasmus, the great humanist scholar, wrote in a letter in the year 1519, "The king has such affection for More that he can scarcely bear to be without him. When serious matters are discussed, no one is more useful. When the king wishes to relax, no companion is more pleasant." This was genuine affection, documented, mutual, which makes what Henry does to him 15 years later profoundly personal. Think about the psychology here. Henry doesn't just need More to comply, he needs More to be wrong. Because if More, the most principled man in England, says Henry's actions are unjust, then maybe they are. And Henry cannot allow that doubt to exist. So he sets out to destroy More in a way that will eliminate the doubt forever. More is arrested on April 17, 1534, charged with refusing to take the oath of succession. This oath required acknowledgement of Henry's marriage to Anne Boleyn as legitimate and his break with Rome as lawful. More does not refuse dramatically. He simply says he cannot, in conscience, swear to it. He offers to swear to the succession itself, to acknowledge Elizabeth as heir, but he will not affirm the religious premises. This nuance matters to More. It does not matter to Henry. More is taken to the Tower of London, not to the dungeons, not yet. He is given a cell in the bell tower, a relatively comfortable chamber with a window, a bed, access to writing materials. This is strategic. Henry VIII does not want More tortured in ways that would create a martyr. He wants More to suffer in ways that look reasonable, legal, almost gentle. The torture is isolation, time, uncertainty. More's letters from the Tower, collected by his daughter Margaret and later published, reveal the psychological campaign in chilling detail. He is allowed visitors at first. His family can come, though conversations are monitored. He can receive food, books, some comforts. But every visit is an opportunity for pressure. His wife Alice, a practical woman who never understood More's principles, begs him to take the oath. His children plead. His friends try to reason with him. And each conversation ends the same way. More, gently, firmly, refuses. Here's what makes this especially cruel. Henry VIII does not execute More immediately. He keeps him in the tower for 15 months. 15 months of isolation, of watching other prisoners taken to execution, of hearing the screams from the torture chambers below, of waiting. This is calculated psychological warfare. More knows Henry, knows what he is capable of. Every day that passes is another day wondering if today is the day. Every footstep in the corridor could be the guards coming to take him to the scaffold. Thomas Cromwell, Henry's chief minister, and the man orchestrating More's destruction, visits him repeatedly. These are not interrogations in the traditional sense. They are conversations, almost friendly. Cromwell tries logic, tries appeals to More's family, tries to find a compromise, a form of words More could swear to in good conscience, because Cromwell understands something important. If More breaks, the entire opposition to Henry collapses. More is the moral authority. If he bends, everyone else will follow. But More does not bend, and so the conditions deteriorate. In the winter of 1534 to 1535, More's cell becomes colder. His fuel allowance for heating is reduced. His books are removed, one by one, until he is left with only a prayer book and a piece of coal to write with. His daughter Margaret describes visiting him in February 1535. I found my father much changed. His beard grown long, his clothing thin and inadequate against the cold. He made light of it, as was his nature, but I could see how the confinement wore upon him. Not his spirit, which remained bright, but his body, which grew daily more frail. This is torture through deprivation. Nothing dramatic, nothing that leaves marks, just the slow erosion of health and comfort, and still More does not break. In April 1535, a new strategy begins. More's isolation becomes complete. No more visitors, no more letters, no more contact with the outside world at all. He is moved to a smaller, darker cell, a cell with no window. For a man of More's intellect, a man whose entire life has been ideas, books, conversations, this is specifically designed torture. He is being buried alive in darkness and silence. His writing materials are confiscated. The reason given is that he might be using them to write seditious material. More, who has been scrupulously careful not to speak against the king, and who has chosen silence as his defense, is now denied even the ability to write private prayers. Think about the precision of this cruelty. Henry knows more. He knows that physical pain might create a martyr, but this slow erasure, this leaves no dramatic wounds. Just a man disappearing into silence. And it is all perfectly legal. More is a prisoner awaiting trial. These are standard security measures, reasonable precautions, except they are not. They are designed by someone who knows exactly how to hurt this specific person in ways that will not create sympathy. In May 1535, Parliament passes the Act of Treasons. This new law makes it treason not just to act against the king, but to speak against him, or to refuse to speak when commanded. This is the trap. More has been using silence as his shield. He will not affirm the oath, but he will not speak against it either. Under the old law, silence could not be punished. Under the new law, silence is treason. More understands immediately what this means. His daughter Margaret, in her biographical notes, records his words when he learned of the new law. They have closed the last door. Now silence itself is death. Clever, very clever. But he still does not speak. On June 12, 1535, More is interrogated for the final time. The record of this interrogation, preserved in the state papers, reveals something chilling. The interrogators, led by Cromwell, do not ask More to affirm the oath directly. They ask him why he refuses. They ask what he thinks of those who have taken it. They ask theoretical questions about papal authority. Every question is designed to make More speak against the king, while seeming to simply invite his opinion. More, even after 14 months in the Tower, even weakened by confinement, recognizes the trap. He gives one of the most brilliant legal defenses in English history. He states that he has formed his conscience carefully, that his conscience is his own, that he wishes the king well and prays for him daily. But he cannot, will not, discuss the reasons for his silence, because to do so would be to break that silence. It is a masterpiece of evasion. He says nothing that can legally be called treason, nothing that can be twisted into evidence. And this, finally, is when Henry stops pretending there are rules. 4 days later, Richard Rich, the Solicitor General, visits More's cell, alone. No witnesses. He later claims they had a conversation about hypothetical scenarios, about what More would say if Parliament declared Rich king, or if Parliament declared the Pope had no authority. More, according to Rich, spoke freely in this theoretical discussion. And those theoretical statements, Rich claims, constitute treason. More denies this conversation ever happened. He points out that Rich came alone, that there are no witnesses, that Rich is a known perjurer who has given false testimony before. The court believes Rich anyway, because by this point, the truth does not matter. Henry needs More dead, not just dead. Condemned, proven wrong, destroyed in a way that discredits everything he stood for. More is convicted of treason on July 1st, 1535. He is sentenced to be hanged, drawn, and quartered. This is the standard sentence for traitors. It means being dragged through the streets, partially hanged, disemboweled while still alive, then beheaded and dismembered. It is designed to be as horrific as possible, a public spectacle of suffering. But here is where something unexpected happens. Henry commutes the sentence to simple beheading. This is presented as mercy, as the king showing leniency to an old friend. But think about what this really means. If More is executed with the full horrors of a traitor's death, he becomes a martyr to Henry's cruelty. The execution becomes about Henry's brutality, not More's treason. But if More is given a merciful death, the narrative changes. It becomes about Henry's restraint, his generosity. Even in justice, he shows compassion. This is propaganda masquerading as mercy. More understands this too. When told of the commuted sentence, he reportedly said, "God forbid the king should show any more such mercy unto any of my friends." Even at the end, More is sharper than his executioners. He is scheduled to die on July 6, 1535 at 9 o'clock in the morning on Tower Hill. On the night before his execution, More is finally allowed to see his daughter Margaret one last time. The account of this meeting, written by Margaret herself, is one of the most heartbreaking documents in Tudor history. She describes her father as cheerful, making jokes, comforting her. But she also describes something else. How thin he has become, how his hands shake, how the 15 months in the Tower have aged him decades. This is what the isolation did. What the cold, the darkness, the silence accomplished. Not a broken man, but a hollowed one. A man reduced to pure spirit because his body has been slowly consumed. And yet his final words to Margaret are about forgiveness. "I pray you, be of good cheer, and do not worry about me. I shall pray for you and all of yours. And the first beg you, pray for the king, that it may please God to give him good counsel." Think about that. After everything Henry has done to him, More's final message is to pray for Henry. This is either sainthood or the final psychological victory. Maybe both. The morning of July 6th, More is led from the Tower to the scaffold. He is so weak that he has to be helped up the steps. The scaffold is poorly built, unstable. More, even now, makes a joke. "I pray you, Master Lieutenant, see me safe up, and for my coming down, let me shift for myself." The crowd, assembled to watch a traitor die, laughs. This is not what they expected. This is not a broken man. This is someone who still has the presence of mind to make the executioner smile. More gives a brief speech. He is careful with his words. He states that he dies the king's good servant, but God's first. 7 words that encapsulate everything he has endured, everything he has refused to surrender. Then he kneels, adjusts his beard so it will not be struck by the axe, joking that it at least has committed no treason, and places his head on the block. The execution is quick. The executioner is skilled. More dies instantly. But here is where Henry's cruelty extends even beyond death. More's head is boiled, according to standard practice, and displayed on London Bridge. A warning to anyone else who might value conscience over obedience. It stays there for 1 month. His body is buried in an unmarked grave at the Tower. No ceremony, no memorial. He is erased as completely as possible, except he is not. Because Margaret More, his daughter, does something extraordinary. She bribes the authorities to get her father's head back before it rots away completely. She keeps it, preserved, for the rest of her life. When she dies, it is buried with her in the family vault. This small act of defiance, this refusal to let her father be completely erased, is how we still remember Thomas More today. But here is what truly haunts me about this story. Henry did not need to destroy More the way he did. More was one man, principled but powerless. His silence was not preventing Henry from marrying Anne Boleyn or breaking with Roma. Everything Henry wanted he already had, but he could not tolerate the existence of someone who said no. The 15 months in the Tower, the psychological isolation, the slow deprivation, the manufactured trial, all of it was designed not to punish treason, but to eliminate the possibility that conscience could resist power. And it failed, because More did not break. His body failed. His circumstances became impossible. But the thing Henry wanted, More's acknowledgement that Henry was right, he never got. More died still believing he was correct, still silent on the question that Henry needed him to answer. That silence echoes forward 500 years. It is the silence of everyone who ever said no to power, who valued principle over survival, who chose erasure over compromise. And maybe that is why Henry worked so hard to break him, because he understood that as long as one person could say no and mean it, absolute power was a lie. The question is not whether More was right about papal authority or the king's marriage. The question is what it means that he was willing to die rather than say something he did not believe, and what it means that Henry was willing to destroy him for it. If this exposed something you have never heard before, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we are going to keep uncovering the history they tried to erase. Drop a comment with your thoughts about conscience versus power, and I will see you in the next investigation.